So we're going to dive into a conversation about manipulation, and we're going to do it a little differently this year. We have a bit of a role play that we're going to do in a bit. Just before we get started on that, though, I just wanted to talk about manipulation in groups, and specifically core members trying to manipulate the circle to get what they want. So just by a show of hands for people who've been in circles before, have you ever kind of felt like you're trying to be manipulated by your core? So it can happen, not everybody, certainly, and it's not, I would say in the experience I've had with manipulation, it's not always even they're intending to manipulate to get something that they want. It's just they have a habit of manipulation. Sometimes sexual deviancy comes from a place of secrecy and a place of manipulation to make sure that they're not found out. And so at times that can become a pattern of behavior that we as volunteers have to call out and try to redirect as part of our circle. So in terms of those who have experienced manipulation before, what kind of manipulation have you seen? Just, you can stand up and say what you've seen, if it was a specific example or a way of manipulation. Does anyone have an example? Yeah.
The CM was attempting over a number of sessions to get sympathy towards himself and a circle of friends versus the PO. He would make suggestions or actually allegations about things that had gone on our meetings with his PO to try to get us to be aligned against the PO. And to some degree was successful with one of our members who was quite sort of sympathetic.
Yeah.
I don't need it. I found an example where intimidation, physical intimidation, became part of their behavior. Not so much as I'm going to kill you, but talking about the violence they had done in prison and violence they have been struggling with facing, and then they do something like shake your hand and near break it off kind of concept. So you just got the sense that violence was always under the edge. So we spent a lot of time placating this. And I'm not certain, but I would quite suspect it was part of trying to turn the circle that became their circle so they would be the center of attention and no one would challenge them. Because sometimes if you challenge them, they got very angry, loud. Again, you heard the stress level go up and they get thumped on the table. So, yeah, I would say subdued and not so hidden aggression and violence simmering under the edge is part of how some, particularly some of the pure ones, who perhaps survive on the inside without necessarily a support structure inside, but topping it out. People would bring that into a circle.
Okay. Is there another example? Anybody who experienced manipulation? Yeah, Nina?
I know with the first group we had, the CM would kind of triangulate, basically just talk to the one that supported him, or he felt that supported him more, and trying to divide the group up, and would phone certain certain volunteers but not others, and then we're saying we're as a group, and this should be, so you can see him just divide and conquer. So that's another strategy that's used.
Service on that.
Yes?
I'd just like to sort of tie this in with Rolf's question earlier, because I think there is a lot of manipulation around the fact that they would not reoffend again, that they're not at risk, because that's a form of saying manipulation, hey, I don't want to answer these questions, but then when you call them on the fact the circle will close, things change. So I think that's just another way of tying the two in of when we close circles, when they're manipulated. Does that kind of make sense to you? It does to me in the circles where the guys normally don't think they're at risk any longer, and I go to the circle, and at the end of the circle, yes, that they were just hoping they didn't have to go there.
Well, I think from our point of view as supporting the core member, we can never take the opinion that this is over and they're rehabilitated. We have to always be concerned that they have something that's not being dealt with here, and we got to find out what that is. And I think that goes back to what the CoSA side, what the accountability side is for us. And so they may not even be directly aware of it. But all these things are related. Going back to something we talked about a little bit further about what we're looking out for in the reoffending, we have to be really careful and know what their triggers are. And those are the points we have to focus on. How are they handling those? Because if they can't give you some kind of an idea about them, right away the flag goes up, wait a minute, you're not even close to being rehabilitated here because you can't even verbalize what's going on with this. So we need to talk about it. Tell me what's going on.
So the two parts of manipulation that we want to talk about today, one is how to recognize manipulation is going on in your group, and we're going to talk a little bit about the ways in which they can use manipulation to try to get what they want. And then the next thing is how you can call them out on it. So to get back to the point of how do you challenge your CM. The support part, I think, so it's because we're Canadians, possibly, we're very supportive and very happy and very go-lucky, and sometimes that can take place of not wanting to be too pushy. But when I think of the best friends I've ever had in my life, they're the ones who, if I've done something wrong, they have called me out on it. And I think that's what we're striving for here, is to truly care enough about them to point out that that behavior is not okay. Hey, you mentioned that. I want to unpack that a little bit more because I don't know if that's really what you mean or if that's a fair statement. So we're going to talk a little bit about those two things, and we're going to do it through a role play, which will break into two pieces. So the first part will be about manipulation, and then we're going to break out into smaller groups, and you'll have a chance to talk about what you saw, to discuss what kinds of manipulation you think you saw, and we'll come back and talk a little bit about that. And then we'll do part two of the role play where you see the group challenging the CM about that manipulation. And again, we'll break out and have an opportunity to talk about what worked and what didn't, and we'll come back at the end to sort of recap to see what we can take away as volunteers. So you're very, very fortunate today. We put out a casting call for some of the finest actors in Vancouver, and we got 4 of them. Which we're very lucky, and then I signed on because nobody else wanted to be the CM. So you're stuck with me, but we do have 4 very talented people. So just to sort of give you the background on the circle, I'm just going to describe the situation that the circle's in and what you're going to see, and then we'll call up each of the volunteers and do a bit of an introduction on their role within the circle. We'll see sort of a full meeting, but a shortened version. It'll take place over kind of 20 minutes in total here. And the circle, the core member for the circle is named Jeff, which will be played by me. And so Jeff's a well-educated individual, and his criminal background is mostly based on control and emotional manipulation, which we see out of some of our CMs. He's intelligent, he doesn't believe he's at risk to reoffend, he's not sure why these conditions are on him, he doesn't understand why he's kind of out in society but still has to play by these revised rules. And he struggles to get along with the Corrections Canada, has a difficulty with his PO, and gets into arguments quite frequently. So that's the CM that we know. Our first volunteer, if I could ask Rolf to come up to the front. Rolf will be playing the role of Jack, who is the most experienced volunteer in the group, and he often takes the lead to sort of drive the discussion. He's a patient person who tries to focus on asking questions rather than giving advice, which is a good role to take within the group. We then have Kelly, which will be played by Mark. Mark, do you want to come on up? So she's the challenger of the group, always pushes the CM to take ownership of their actions and to ensure that we're getting a clear and accurate view of what happened. We then have Dan, who will be played by Steve. So he has a high emotional intelligence, tends to focus on understanding the sort of how the CM they felt during what was going on. So Steve, I don't know if you can come up, or the camera will run itself, hopefully. And then we have Samantha, who will be played by Carol, so one of the newer members of the group. So we often have a couple of senior people, more experienced people, and then we have newer members of the group, and this is her first circle. So we'll see how that sort of plays out as well. So for the first part, we'll go through the check-in, we'll hear from the volunteers and what sort of happened over the last week, and then we're going to see the first part of the meeting where we're talking about the CM's week as well.
So anyways, I'll start my check-in here, and because I'm the oldest of the group, so what I'll do is, you know, I had a terrible time last week, and what happened was I was driving along and not paying attention to my driving and everything, and I just, you know, the policeman pulled me over for speeding in a school zone, right? So it's just like, oh man, I was so mad because now this is going to cost me $400, right? Between the points and the fine and everything else, and it was just terrible. But then I thought about it, and I thought, well, I guess I really deserved it. I should have been paying attention in the school zone, and I was not, so I guess I'll just accept that, and I'll pay the $400 and just get on with life.
Well, I have to thank you, Rolf, for one thing, when you said you were the oldest of the group. I'm really glad to hear that. I'm not going to tell you how old I am. But anyway, it's good to see you here again this week. I'm glad you've been coming every week. That's good. And I just have a little thing that I want to talk about too, is I had a close friend talk to me, and she said that I didn't listen to her, and I always thought I was such a great listener, and I was really hurt and insulted that she was saying this about me, and I just kind of left. But when I got home, I started thinking about it, you know, maybe she was right. I wasn't really thinking. When she was telling me something, I kind of jumped in and started talking about the same thing that happened to me. And when you do that, you're not really listening. So it helped. So I haven't thanked her yet, but I guess I'm going to have to. So I worked with that, and I've got over it, and I don't feel angry at her anymore.
Well, Jeff, I know that sometimes the work situation can be challenging. And so in my nursing position, I have seniority. And so I choose which days I can go in. So I have complete control over my schedule. And I float to all the different units. So they just put me wherever they want to put me. Then I've realized recently that the person in authority on whichever floor that I walk onto will oftentimes give me the most difficult assignment. And that's hard. Like it can be very hard to sort of always have the hardest assignment every time you go in. So I thought, okay, I will either, because I get full control over my schedule, and I've got kids at home, and actually I wasn't supposed to mention about the kids. Anyways. So I choose at this time to do the most difficult position, even though it's not really right that they do that to me, because I get the freedom to choose my schedule. And that's sort of how I can't change how they handle the situation, but I can change my attitude about it. So that's sort of how I deal with that situation.
Thanks. Hi, Jess. I apologize. I've had a tremendously busy week. It was just really stressful, and I meant to try and get to see you this week, but it didn't work out. So I'll try harder next week. But one thing that happened in my work week, as you know, I teach school, and everyone, so often students come back and say hi. And this week, these students came back, and they're 35 years old now, and very successful, 4 of them. And I asked each one of them, you know, what did they do, and what were they doing with their lives, and all had a different story, but all of them were doing so well. And when I think back to them in school, they were always the first to put their hands up. When there was something to be done around the school, if there's a volunteer, if there's a club, or there was some work to be done, those kind of students were always the ones who put their hands up, and those are the ones that seemed successful. So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking for you, you know, we need to push you a little bit more in helping others. There's no better feeling than reaching out and helping. So I took a liberty and did some phone calls and went about and found a soup kitchen that it's in your neighborhood, And you could walk there, and I'm pretty sure we can get clearance for you to get there. And I really think it would be a good challenge for you to volunteer and do something for some other people.
Okay, well, so thanks everybody for sharing. I had a rough week this week. I talked to a couple of you on the phone, had a big meeting with my PO this week. Once again, I find, she's really difficult to work with. I don't understand why it's so hard just to get through to her that I'm trying to do better and I'm asking to have my conditions changed, and she said that she's not supportive of it. So I've been going through this whole rigmarole with my lawyer to get this changed, and she said she's not going to support it because of degrading attitude, which is ridiculous. I go every week. I'm not asked to do anything more than go every week. I do that, and for some reason she's not being supportive of it. So I challenged her and said, so with the people with my kind of conditions, how often do they succeed? And she couldn't even give me an answer. So just stupid. Couldn't possibly tell me anything about the other people that she works with. It's just been so frustrating. On the plus side, had a good week of work. My boss said that I was doing a great job. I'm doing the janitorial position now for about 2 months. And that's going well, but to be honest, how long until that gets off the rails anyway, right? I mean, this is with the conditions I have, I don't see how I'm set up to succeed in this so at all, which I just really don't understand. So that was my week. Didn't have a good meeting with my PO again, didn't have a good meeting on the lawyer side, and I'm just waiting to have the other shoe drop on work as well. So.
You spend a lot of time talking about your PO, and your own feeling of frustration. And do you think that there's some things she can't really tell you about some of the other, what's really going on with the others? So do you think when you talk with her that you were really dealing with what you're feeling? Like you said that you felt really frustrated and annoyed with her, and you spent a lot of time this week feeling frustrated. What do you usually do when you feel frustrated?
Well, I share at the meeting. I go to my PO, I share about what my week was, and that's what I'm asked to do. I mean, so I had a friend who went through this with the exact same PO, and she screwed up all of his paperwork, and it was always a big nightmare, and that's what happened to him, and I'm just waiting to see that happens to me. I mean, I should be getting more support from my PO than that. It's reasonable to be frustrated. I don't see how I'm supposed to enjoy this process when I know that, I have this other guy out there who went through the same process, and now it's a big nightmare for him. So what should I be doing to help the PO help me better than she did him?
I can't help to say that I feel like you're very victimized. You feel very victimized by this whole thing, and I want to just change your focus. And work's going so well for you these days. You've got glowing reports from your supervisors, and you're always on time, and you're doing what you're supposed to do. And I know there's issues with not being able to connect to the internet and follow up on other applications and stuff, but still, I think you should focus more of that negative energy, I hate to use that word, but on things that are going well for you right now, and work is going well. So maybe we could look at, if a better job came up, how could we help you to get access to the internet so you can apply for it properly and do those things, and focus more on moving your career forward instead of always talking about the PO.
Well, I mean, that's a really good point, Dan. I mean, I've been working hard at work. That's how, I've done all that myself. I've worked really hard to get to where I am. But if I was offered a promotion, Dan, so every promotion that I would get would involve a requirement to use a computer, and I'm not allowed to with my condition. So right off the bat, I'd have to turn that down, and then I'd have to explain why I couldn't do it, and then I'd probably be fired. So I'm caught in a system that doesn't allow me to succeed. I truly got the impression my boss was probably half a second away from offering me a promotion. I'm doing so well there. And then I'd have to turn it down, and that would be the end of my work.
just have to ask a question here. Like, you're doing janitorial work, correct? So, if you get a promotion, now, why would you need to use the internet? And you know, like, how did you get to this point where you're not allowed to use the internet and do all this stuff? How does that work?
Well, I got here because of my crimes. I get that. But so how am I supposed to be a better person if they're not going to let me? If I got promoted, I would be in charge of scheduling. Scheduling's done on a computer. Computer has internet. I'm not going to be able to use it. I mean, I just want someone to lobby for me. I'm out there working as hard as I can, and no one lobbies for me. I mean, my PO is not lobbying for me. You guys aren't lobbying for me. I have to go to these meetings on my own. It's not fair. I'm doing my best, and no one is helping me to get through this.
I think that part of our group is not to lobby for you, but to be a support for you here and to help you get through some of this stuff. And I think what you need to do is maybe just take a look at how you can work through all of this with our support, with our moral support. But we can't really go to the PO and say, you should be doing this and you should be doing this for you. It's an untenable situation for us. We are here to support you.
Well, I'm new to these circles, Jeff, but the way I understand the purpose of the circle is to help and support you in what you can do under the circumstances that you find yourself in. And what I'm hearing is a lot of talk about people and circumstances that surround you that there isn't much that can be done about. So I would like to hear more about what you can do something about so that you can actually make your way forward in this situation.
Well, you're a bit new here, so I understand that. That's not really how my last circle functioned. That's not how my ongoing relationship is with Maureen either. It's about me being able to come here and have a safe space to share. So I'll share about my week, and that's what we're here to do. And to be honest, I mean, Dan and I, we always chat outside of the meetings, and I think Dan actually really gets it. He seems to understand what I'm going for here. So maybe it'd be more helpful if you had a little bit more time to talk to Dan and get up to speed on how the circle works. Okay, I think we'll call it there. Did people feel that they worked well, they didn't work well? What did you observe that was specifically helpful to this group? Yes?
One thing I would say about the check-in is that 3 out of the 4 were good. But the one member who made more than a suggestion that he had phoned about the soup kitchen and basically pressed it on him. That to me was that's some form of manipulation of its own. What we need to do is find out what they might be interested to do and suggest that they might do it, but we have to move them along. We don't go doing it for them.
Right.
I think he's right. You can try, but in the long term, if you find it, the tiny percentage they'll go with it. If they find it probable, they'll stay with it for a while.
But it was not appropriate for a check-in.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, yeah, maybe the body of the meeting is a good time to say, hey, actually I heard about this really great opportunity, maybe we could talk about that a little bit in the meeting. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
just review, like, what is the purpose of the check-in? I always thought it was just to show that everybody struggles with something, but.
Sure, so Maureen and Anita, so everybody can weigh in, I'll kind of summarize what I see as value added in the check-in. Usually, you want to know what your CM is struggling with and provide an example from your life that speaks to that and speaks to, if you know your CM has a problem with authority, to provide an example where you had a difficult problem with your boss this week, but you resolved it by understanding and talking through it. That's a really helpful way to start the meeting off on the right foot. But the goal is to keep it short, keep it relevant, and keep it generic so you're not providing any personal details about yourself. Is that?
That's good. Just always focusing on something that happened to you in the week. It has a lot to do with your family. but a situation that you had that was difficult, that you either handled well or handled not so well, those were all positive. I think it's better when we talk about from our own weakness and something we've done. It's easier for them to be honest about it. And it should really be not more than 1 minute, because then the focus becomes on us.
So any other comments on the check-in? Yes.
Aren't all the volunteers said very good comments, but the core member did not basically give any feedback, and it was not reflective, or there was no self-awareness about himself. It was basically more putting the blame on somebody else.
So focus on self-awareness. So it's one thing, I mean, with the speeding ticket, I thought that was a good arc where you sort of say, oh, I don't want to do it, and then realize, you know what, yeah, that was on me, so I just need to kind of cough up and pay that. I thought, so that was a good version of self-awareness there. But
There's good ownership in the check-in.
I guess have issues. Yeah.
And one of the things missing though was the core member mentioned that he had contact with a couple of the core members. In the check-in, it's very important, rather than a strength or weakness, if you have talked or met with the core member during the week, that's the time you need to say. So there is group consensus and there's no triangulation. So I met with the core member at Starbucks, and it was just, you know, talking generalities, weather, what have you. Or the core member said this: it is very important that your check-in is on your meeting or your conversation with the core member during the week if you've had it.
Yeah, I would always bring up the circle of text messages, because sometimes there's micro text messages, sometimes it was personal to us, from the core member, but we always mention it, that it's happened, and especially if the core member mentioned a problem in the text message, we make that, we try to move that to the beginning of his check-in. You know, if he texted just me, you know, I just want to go out and punch somebody in the face, and then that would be right before, I just wanted it so bad with the porn. That would be, the check-in would be, my check-in would mention anything about me at all. Would say, I was concerned about the text message you sent me, did the rest, did you get that message about that conflict you had? So can we talk about that when we get going?
Let's move into the kinds of manipulation we saw. So what were some examples of manipulation we observed in the meeting?
Well, he took the poor me card, you know, he tried to get people to feel sorry for him, right? Or jump on his bandwagon.
Denigrating his PO's work, that she's stupid, she's not doing well, she's not fair. It was basically tearing a strip off her when she's not there to say anything about it. Oh, and pointing to somebody else who's getting a better deal.
Yeah. Or maybe the group should have called him on that part in regards to the fact that, hey, you know, you aggravate your PO, she's going to be even more.
Yeah. Well, we kind of broke the meeting in. You'll see a little bit of that in the next scene. But ideally, it's going to be challenging it while it's happening, not just allowing sort of that first pass. So keep spitting it out, everybody. I can keep writing.
Basically saying that Dan understands him and maybe the others should come on board. So again, that's triangulation and separating.
Yeah, fracturing the group.
The expectation that the group would be lobbying for him.
Yes.
There's one in there too, talking about a friend. So now you have to box a ghost in the room. You have no details about what this was or what the circumstance is, so it's easy to throw out an example of someone no one has met in a situation that may or may not have occurred. That can be really tough to respond to, so there are many details.
An ad-hom and an attack on it.
Yeah. It's kind of reducing or belittling the contribution here. One thing that I see sometimes too is and I'm not sure if it's a form of manipulation or just the way that sometimes the brain goes, but you think of one bad thing that can happen and then you talk about the 8 things that would follow after that. So the idea that he's going to be offered a promotion and then we'll have to turn it down and then we'll be fired, it's almost as though that becomes reality. Now you're talking about something that has already happened, when in fact, that's kind of catastrophizing what could occur. And you sort of want to put a stop to, well, let's look at things we can control right now and talk about that. Was there anything else?
Deflection, deflecting from his own issues onto everybody else's in the situation. He wasn't really talking about it.
Catastrophizing. Engineer, everybody, not a speller. Deflecting, absolutely.
Sort of setting the volunteers up for the blame game, if it doesn't work well for them, it's their fault. If they can't see what's going to go bad for him, if they don't intervene on behalf of his PO, if they don't make it work for him, make it enjoy. What was the word? Enjoyable, fun, something like that. Enjoyable. Then that's on his volunteers.
Yeah.
If he wasn't accepting ownership or anything going wrong, it wasn't like anything to do with him.
The other thing is, none of his commentary reflected on any of his conditions or situations. It's all, apart from having built, as part of the petition, everything else was sort of irrelevant. So it's just dismissive, I would say, that kind of manipulation.
I don't know what's in part 2, but he also didn't bring up anything about his risk factors. Whether they were touched upon during that week, whether he dealt with them, or whether he even experienced them.
Yeah.
And nobody asked him about what's going on inside his head. Of course, he happens to be second half.
Yeah, because our responsibility as volunteers, of course, is to talk about risk factors, bring it back to those core factors that we need to talk about, as opposed to discussing how it fell down the line 10 steps later. So.
The volunteers who tried to encourage him, like, what can you do about this, yourself? And then he went off in another direction, rather than looking at, is there something I can do? I think that would have been helpful for him to think that through.
Yeah, I call that misdirection, where you ask about a point and then they answer a question that wasn't asked, but it certainly drew the conversation somewhere else rather than coming back. And it's not bad, actually. Like, I've had a meetings before I've said, whoa, time out. We just moved past something and we didn't actually talk about it, so let's go back to what that's in. So. Yes, Mike.
The question I have is, when you see this behavior, and there's a pattern and it's continued, at what point do you kind of say, okay, do we need to close the circle?
Whoa, what a perfect segue into part 2. We've had our intermission now, everyone is out there candy and settled in. So can I ask the volunteers to come back up and we'll proceed with part 2. So this won't be a separate meeting or anything, it's just continuing.
So again, Jeff, I do hear frustration, but I do want to reiterate here that we are here because of your actions. We're here to support you and in finding your way forward in that. That's sort of what we need to focus on and to try and help you figure out a way forward from this situation.
Samantha took all that time last week and helped you with your resume and get you prepared for any future interviews. And I went out of my way and made phone calls and tried to find volunteer work for you. And I don't really feel you're appreciating that we are here to support you. Okay, we're not really your friends. We're here to support you, and we can only lobby for you as much as we can be here in this meeting to support you. Our job isn't to talk to your CM or to give you references for apartments that you may be seeking out. That's not our role. Our role is to support you in your development and your emotional development and moving forward in society.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of grievances, and when we come here, it's not for you to speak a whole hour of all your grievances. That's not the issue. So I think maybe we need to look at the covenant. So I've got the covenant here. Maybe we can go over it and for you to get a better understanding of why we're here. Because if we just continuously listen to all your grievances, we won't get anywhere. So we have to start back in the beginning to help you get over some of these grievances. And I think we can begin with this covenant. How do you feel about that? About the covenant, because you've never mentioned it, and I know that we haven't spoken enough about it, and you need to share a little bit more with us about the covenant.
Well, and so we do the check-in, and then I get to do my part, and my part is to tell you that I've had a really rough week. I don't understand how that's not doing what I've asked to do here, which is telling you about my week. Yeah, the covenant says that we'll share as much as we're willing to. Well, that's how much I'm willing to share.
Okay, well, let's start reading the covenant.
Okay, so it starts at the top here. The heading says covenant. I don't actually have a covenant in front of me. Okay, it says that I will be open and honest and share to my ability to, which I think I already addressed. It says that I have risk factors. I am at risk to offend again, which I've told you I don't agree with. I don't think that I am at risk to reoffend.
Okay, that's where we'll start. We'll start talking. I'll let Jack help you out with that. He's pretty good at that.
Jeff, I think we've touched on some of this already, but what do you think the real role of CoSA is? Well, you're here to hear me out, help me with getting back into society. So if I need help to find a job, you're here to help me with that. If I'm having a hard time with my PO, you're going to listen and you're going to support me through those difficulties. So if my PO is being unfair and being stupid, then your job is to support me in that and to lobby for me. Well, Jeff, I think what we need to do is not just support you whether you think you're right or wrong, but we need to be realistic about all of this. You have offended, you are still at risk of offending, and sometimes just looking at this group, I don't think maybe it will work all the time here. And you've had phone calls with the other members here, but I phoned you and you never called me back at all. And I think we have a bit of a problem here. I think maybe we should ask Maureen to come to the next meeting. And the theme should be to review the covenant and talk about your lack of contribution in regards to the covenant that we've written up, right? Maybe there's a possibility that the circle needs to close.
Well, so I'm going to be honest, I feel really attacked today. I thought this was supposed to be a safe space for me, and now I feel like you've all really come after me today. And I think I have to revisit whether or not I think this is a place for me to feel safe. And I would like to talk to each of you individually outside of the circle, and I don't want you sharing that information until we come back next week.
Well, that's not the way that CoSA really works. Is everything gets shared with everybody else within the circle here, and that's just the way it is, Jeff.
Well, maybe we'll have to talk to Maureen next week and see if this makes sense then.
We look forward to seeing Maureen, correct?
So that was challenge. The first response for most people would actually to be defensive, and these are people who, when challenged, the automatic response is to be defensive. So it's our responsibility not to think, well, what a ridiculous comment, but how can I unpack that a little bit more? How can I push them a little bit further to take recognition and acknowledge that they're here today because of their actions, and that we are here to support them and keep them accountable for those actions. So just to sort of wrap that up, but what I'd really be interested in now is we'll break into those groups again, and just for 5 minutes or so, would like you to talk about how our volunteers here challenged the CM. So what are some things that worked well? What are some things that maybe didn't work as well? And what are things that you didn't see that you think would be a good way to challenge the CM as well? And we'll come back in 5 minutes and write those up when we work. Is there anything we saw that worked well, we thought, during that last little role play?
Redirecting the question back to the CM.
So bringing the question back, redirecting it back to them, and actually trying to get an answer, that's an important way to challenge the CM, not just let them move on. What else do we see?
I think going back to the covenant was a great thing, but I would have taken it a step further and started talking about the specifics in the covenant. And instead of talking about the covenant in a general way, I would say, hey, this is what we agreed upon, and start listing the things that were in that covenant.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, absolutely. So you want to talk about the covenant, bring it back to basics, go through the covenant. Hopefully you have a copy at the meeting so you can actually go through what was discussed.
I think it also points out that when you started reading the covenant, it was all kind of loose. You need to have very detailed elements in there, and actually if you get in a situation like that, like we're assuming this has been going on for a while, it's not a brand new circle. So if you see that the CM is moving away in a certain direction on these things, you bring it back to the covenant and say, we're going to reopen this covenant because we need to address this.
Yeah.
And you build it in there. And so now you have to make them make a commitment to this.
Yeah, it's a specific item everyone agrees to, right? So you can go back to that and say, well, hold on, we talked about this. This is important for your success, so let's discuss it.
Very positive. In this specific CM, this specific meeting, it was excellent that they brought it. Margaret brought it, I can't remember what your character's name is, brought it to a meeting hall when he said, I don't have any risks. Because that's the deal killer, that's the only reason we're there, really. Ultimately, this is a person at risk. That's why we are accountable and support, because it's a person at risk.
Yeah,
with society at risk. So I thought it was excellent. There are sometimes points that can occur in a meeting when you say, wait a minute, do we still have a circle?
Yes?
Just a point about that risk, I think it's really important as far as the purpose of a circle and for focus, for accountability. But also be careful of how the person may be interpreting the term risk. So having the specific elements in the covenant is great. Because, for instance, if I carry the sense, well, am I at risk? Well, I don't want to do it, so I have no will to, so I'm not at risk.
Absolutely.
So really unpacking just even the term risk with them.
Yeah. Like the specific risk factors?
Yeah, the specific risk factors.
Triggers.
And so, because sometimes part of it is are you questioning my intention? You know, and it's not really questioning intention, it's questioning ability in the face of situation.
You just need to risk too. I mean, so the risk of, okay, well, pornography is a risk, so fantasizing is a risk. But actually, so for a lot of our core members, the fact that they would keep secrets or not share openly, that is a risk factor, which they might not associate with a real risk, but that is a risk factor because that's the first step that leads to other things. So it's important to sort of clarify that and make sure you're explaining this isn't about trying to probe and get you to share because we want you to say a bunch of stuff. That's a risk factor. It's when you're not sharing. So that's how your crime cycle. Yes, Maureen.
The one critique I would have of the group, as great as they were, it was the fact that there were a lot of statements made. Probably the worst I can think of is that, well, maybe we're going to have to close the circle, rather than, well, what do you think? Do you think you need a circle? I found a lot of saying rather than asking, drawing them out. And if I had been the core member there, I think I might have felt a little bit attacked in the sense I wasn't asked whether I thought I needed a circle, whether, how I would feel about it, so, yeah. So I think we have to be really, it's not what was said, it was how some of it was said.
Would you think then that we need to find a way to let the core member, we don't feel we're being useful as your support? Like we're feeling that we're failing, we're not getting through to you, or we're not being of any use to you here.
No, I think that's negative too, like what's going on in the circle here, you know, we're wondering of what value is it to you then, and what do you see the value of it, and keeping it open or closing it, have you got thoughts on that, right? Like drawing them out, because I think we put his back up, at least I'm pretty pig-headed, my back would have been up.
Yeah.
If someone had told me that they might be closing my circle or my group, I would think, well,
So having gone through this actually recently, I think, like, you are looking at a couple of stages of a conversation. I think we'll learn a little bit more about closing the circle this afternoon, but the first conversation, and to Rolf's point, was, well, what do you think CoSA is all about? So what is CoSA for you? That's a really good question. And so that's probably enough for that one meeting, just to revisit the idea of what are we all doing here, what do you think the purpose of it is? And then leaving it at that, I think, for the meeting, and we try to cram a lot into this. And then you might have another meeting where you come back and say, okay, so you've now had a week to think about it, what do you think about the answer to that question? Let's talk about why you're here, what CoSA's here to do.
Yeah, and I thought Meryl brought up a couple of good things where, like when it was all going so negative, and she said, like, what I'm, earlier, she said, what I'm hearing is this, like, stuff we can't do, like, can we move it around and talk about stuff that you can do? And, later said, we're here to help you to move forward. We brought it back to a positive, made an attempt to kind of get it back on track.
We totally agree. I think challenging, you might think you always have to be, well, hold on, let's revisit that. Maybe that's not right, but so challenge them to look at the positive. Challenge them to look at what things are going well and how we can build off of that. That's a really important point. Joy.
I think before we even do those things, that's why the CM's back is up, or I don't know how you felt, Connor, when you were doing the thing. It's like, it's as if he was not being heard. So when someone feels that he's not being heard or understood, he's going to close up. And no matter how you do with your directing, being specific, if his close is not going to hear it. So I think first we have to acknowledge and rephrase or repeat whatever he was saying or paraphrase so that he gets to feel like there are 4 people attacking me. So he doesn't become defensive when you say, oh, I know he felt that you're frustrated, he felt your PO is not listening to you. Just, I didn't hear it from the 4 circle members. So it's like Jeff was being cornered by these 4 people. So once those barriers are up, he's not feeling understood, then I don't think these are going to be effective.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So actually in relationship counseling, there's a technique called the mirror. So if somebody says to you, I feel like you're not listening, really powerful to take just a beat and say, so what I'm hearing from you is that you're saying that it doesn't sound like that I'm completely listening to you. And so right then that stops the cycle of going on to 10 more things that are not going well, and that person understands you are listening to what they're saying, and you do actually understand what they're trying to tell you. So really, really important part of challenging.
I thought too that because of the core members' very bad behavior, that the volunteers reacted to that. That they became involved in that, what Joy was talking about. And it was hard, I'm sure, for them to hear that. So how do we keep it together when they react?
I did, that I felt that I wanted to say that I'm feeling really frustrated. You must be feeling really frustrated. I wanted, would that be right?
Yes.
That's what I wanted to say.
Good.
Yeah, would that be okay?
That would be good, yeah. Because we want to be honest about our feelings, so we don't be honest about theirs. I'm frustrated, how are you? Instead, I felt there was a whole reaction, and if I'd been sitting there, my reaction would have been the same. Like, who are you? Why are you speaking to us like this, right?
So any more closing thoughts? Sorry,
There's more, not so much an observation for this group, but I think one of the warning signs to watch out for is when the core member starts to like really drawn on. And keep them tight, so if, if they're spending 15, 20 minutes at the start giving their, view of the world, you need to insert yourself and bring them back. Because the moment they're out like this, you need to bring them here with specific points of accountability. And I think that's another form of kind of, whether it's deliberate manipulation or just a comfort with wallowing in self-pity. Because that you see quite, people will kind of go on and on. And I think part of it is to kind of say, well, let's gently bring it back and look at the specific, and zero in the risk factors. You get, quite frank about this. And because that'll bring people back down.
Is that a sign of reoffending when they get their backs up? Could that be a sign?
Well, I can say for this case, though, it's kind of reasonable to imagine. I mean, even if it was just you, I think if people were challenging you nonstop for a stretch of time, you're probably going to get a bit defensive. You're going to get your back up because you don't like being in a room with people and they're all looking at you and saying that you're not doing a good enough job. So it's almost taking a break from that and saying, hey, so we need to keep you accountable for that specific statement. You said this. Let's unpack that a little more because I don't think that's true. But to switch from that and say that, okay, now let's talk about some of the positive things that we can build off of. And if they try to cycle back to, well, the PO is still terrible and so awful, and so that when you say, again, it's time out here, so we talked a lot about that, we need to talk about what's coming next, not just about what happened over the last week.
And one of the comments on the critique of or criticism of the PO, which goes on a lot in circles, and sometimes it becomes really bad. I think you were on one of the groups, I can't remember, where it's happened twice, where we had to say, look, if you are going to continue criticizing your PO, what they have done and how bad it is and everything's wrong, then we need to invite your PO to the first 15 minutes of the meeting, because we're getting one side of this story, and that is really, really important. And if they say no, and it's happened, we have 2 right now that are like that, they are allowed to talk for 3 to 5 minutes about their PO and vent. As you said, isn't this a place for you? So they're allowed 3 to 5 minutes and then that's it. It's over. Move on. What can you do to deal with your PO? Or what do you need to do? So it's really important, as we, Mike said, bring it down to that point. Let's move on.
So there's sort of 2 more points here, and I'm standing between all of you and that table full of food. So let's do these last 2 points, then we'll break for lunch.
Yeah, what I picked up on, when he first started the meeting with the CM, he was saying how well he was doing in his job, and he was in a position for progress. And I think there was no taking that further. Why did he feel like he was doing good? And especially being a man, I mean, most of us guys, we need building up.
Yes.
If he felt he was doing good work, I think that should have been something that should have been challenged.
Positive.
Oh gosh, okay, great. Okay, well, so if you can please join me to thank our volunteers who got here.
Thanks. Let's give Connor a hand. He wrote